Tonight's sinister story teaches us why we should be careful playing with dolls. Someone could get hurt. Happy anniversary, Groovy Ghoulies. The show is a year old. Can you believe it?
No.
Ryan, I swear, I'll make it look like an accident.
Jacob Platt was a moron, and everyone in town knew it. Everyone also knew about his affair, but he was big and mean, so he did whatever he wanted. He'd leave the lumber mill every day after work and meet up with Carol Ann, the hot-to-trot blonde waitress down at Denning's. They'd run to the bathroom for a round of patty cake and, after a minute, walk out looking pleased with themselves. It didn't take rocket science to figure out what they were doing in a bathroom with one toilet. Besides, the John was out of order. The bowl cracked after someone put too much weight on the seat. Lord knows what Carol Ann saw in him. He wasn't good looking. His face was a lunar landscape with a swollen red pepper nose below saggy eyelids, barely visible under a mop of oily black hair. But whatever the reason, the two were shacking up, and poor Deanna, Jacob's wife, didn't have a clue. Eventually, Carol Ann grew tired of his sneaking and met Jacob in the parking lot to confront him. "Rumors are starting, and people are talking about me like I'm some floozy," she said. "You ain't?" She slapped his shoulder. "You need to commit to one of us, and it better be me. You want me to divorce Deanna and lose half of everything I own? Nah, I like the situation as it is." "Not divorce her. That's worse. I'm no homewrecker." She checked to see if the parking lot was empty. "I want you to kill her." "Are you crazy?" he said, louder than he meant, but she shushed him. "Shut up, you big dumb fool. I got a cousin, you know, the homely looking one who works down at Joe's Crab Shack, tire repair, and fly fishing emporium. Well, she's been playing with Voodoo, trying to catch herself a man. We thought she was crazy, the poor thing, but one day she comes waltzing up the driveway with this young hunk barely out of high school hanging off her arm. Maybe the kid just likes some balding and smelling of cheese. Damn it, Jacob, I'm not fooling around." He sighed. "All right, well, what am I gonna do?" "You make a doll, and whatever you do, it will happen to Deanna." "Sounds easy enough. How do I make this doll?" Carol Ann rolled her eyes. "Hell if I know. Look it up on the internet. That's what she did." "All right, I'll figure something out then." Jacob went home and searched for how to make a voodoo doll. He watched the first few videos on his computer and took notes, minimizing the window whenever his wife Deanna walked past. Making a voodoo doll looked complicated and required skills he didn't have, like pattern making, sewing, and cutting fabric. The videos were vague on how to make the doll, except that he needed a piece of the victim and some blood. But what kind of fabric should he use? The whole mess seemed complicated and confusing, and that pissed him off, so he took a nap. Deanna woke him up an hour later. She said he needed a haircut. He sat in the kitchen and ruminated around while she clipped away. Then it came to him. "Hey, Dee, I need you to help me make a doll." "What do you need a doll for?" He grabbed her thigh through her dress and twisted the skin. She yelped in pain. "Don't matter why I need it, just that I do. Now I asked you something." He squeezed harder to emphasize his point. "I'll help." He let go of her leg, and after a moment of sniffling and whimpering, she continued clipping his hair, and he felt good, big, and tough. Deanna was timid, easy to boss around, and he liked that. But timid gets boring. Carol Ann was a firecracker. His threats didn't intimidate her because she held the power as long as he was cheating. But once Deanna was gone and Carol Ann was his, he'd enjoy breaking her spirit. He leaned back in the chair and ran his tongue across his teeth, enjoying the thought. "I've got some old shirts of ours I was planning on making dish rags out of. Will these do?" she asked, tilting his head and clipping around his ears. He brushed her long blonde hair out of his face. "Yeah, they'll do fine," he said. An old shirt should be personal enough, he reasoned. Deanna finished the haircut and swept the piles of hair in the kitchen, while Jacob watched TV in the living room. He felt good about the voodoo doll situation. The whole complicated mess was out of his hands, and Deanna would make the thing that would kill her. The thought amused him, and he chuckled. He woke up later that night, turned off the TV, and shambled to the empty bed, and fell asleep to the sound of Deanna's sewing machine in the next room. That morning, Deanna brought him the doll while he ate his breakfast, cradling it delicately in her hands. The thing was ugly. It was obvious she used a gingerbread man and cookie cutter for the pattern. A tuft of dark hair topped the doll's head. 2 off-center button eyes sat above a wide and crooked smile she'd drawn on with a pin. "Not my best work, but I think he's cute," she said, and bounced the doll across the table towards Jacob like it was walking. "The hell are you so perky about? It looks like shit. I should have made the damn thing myself." Her smile vanished, and he felt good. He snatched the doll from her hands. The sharp pain of the forgotten sewing pin drove itself deep into his thumb. Jacob yelped and threw the doll to the ground. Deanna bent down and picked up the doll. "I'm sorry, I was tired," she said, pulling the sewing pin out of the doll. Jacob moved fast. He grabbed Deanna by her collar and pulled her across the table, spilling his oatmeal on the floor. "Now look what you made me do!" He raised his hand to hit her, but something squeezed his wrist, and in one swift, fluid moment, his arm bent against the elbow, and the joint snapped. He dropped Deanna and grabbed the pulpy blob of shattered bone and cartilage that was once his elbow. She crawled off the table and composed herself. "We'll have none of that, Jacob Platt," she said, picking the oatmeal off her dress. Jacob sobbed, cradling his backward arm. "What the hell did you do to me?" She bent the doll's arm. Jacob howled in pain. His broken arm twisted further, the bones grinding against each other with a sickening crunch. "Give me the doll, Deanna, please. I'm sorry." "You were planning on murdering me." "I ain't anymore. Now give me the doll." "No," she said. "You don't talk to me that way, you understand? You do as I say," he said as he got to his feet. "I ain't kowtowing with you no more," she said, her voice wavering. Jacob swung at her. His aim was off, and his fist skimmed the tip of her nose. She bent the doll's leg up, and his leg followed. Snapping upwards with such a force, he left the ground, landing hard on his back. He groaned in pain. "You afraid?" she asked. Jacob nodded. "Good." She bent the doll's other leg at the thigh, pulling it back until the stumpy foot touched the back of the doll's head, and Jacob followed suit. He lay on the ground, a moaning, drooling pretzel. "How'd you know?" "You didn't clear your search history." She grabbed the doll by the head and squeezed. His eyes bulged. Panicked, he looked from the doll to her and pleaded, "No." She took a deep breath and twisted. Jacob's head spun around, and he dropped dead. Deanna set the doll on the table and sighed, running her hand through her blonde hair. She fixed a cup of coffee and grabbed her bullet journal, drawing a line through "See Jacob off." She took a sip of coffee and circled "Swing by Dennings for lunch." Today would be a busy day.
Thanks for calling. It just goes to show you that in love and murder, discretion is key. And for God's sakes, clear your search history.
Nothing says I'm guilty like an empty browser history.
That's it for the show. If you enjoyed it, give me a like and subscribe for more monthly spooky content. And click that little bell icon so you know when the next show is out. I'll be waiting right here for the next 13th caller.